Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Work is being done behind the scenes on a new growth path for South Africa. Engineering News editor Terence Creamer recently interviewed Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan about what this plan could entail. Terence, welcome to Second Take. In your discussions with the Finance Minister, did he shed any light on the specific targets being contemplated as well as the components of this plan?
Yes, I think the sort of big takeaway is the figure of 7% growth over 20 years sustained. Now that's obviously a very big ambition in the context of a country that's coming out of its first recession in 17 years, in the context of a world that's struggling to recover from its most catastrophic financial and economic crisis in many, many decades. But I think what he's saying is that it can't be business as usual anymore. We have to set a higher aspiration, higher goals. We have to use the World Cup energy to come up as a country with a new vision and a new growth aspiration. And even though it does look unrealistic at this stage, we need to start looking at how other countries and many other developing and emerging markets have been able to actually achieve that sort of growth rate over such a sustained, or 2 decades of that sort of growth is what we need to do to start creating jobs in this economy and minimizing the income inequality. These are 2 very big crises that South Africa faces. I mean, he mentions in this interview with us, he mentions how the youth unemployment crisis is a particular worry to him. 50% of South African youth are unemployed that should be, in the age groups of working ages. And this is really a sort of a catastrophe in the making. And we have to look at new ways of getting those people to experience work and get job opportunities for them. So yes, a few of the components that he mentioned, and I'm sure there are many more being thought about. Actually, it's a team of ministers looking at that. It's Dr. Davies, the Trade and Industry Minister, Ibrahim Patel, who's leading up this new Economic Development Ministry. And they are looking at what the components should be. But some of the things, looking at the whole education and training system, getting better results from it, but also maybe creating new avenues for people to get into technical training, using the FET colleges as platforms, or maybe even setting up a new class of degree or course or something like that to allow people entry to start matching or aligning the training with the economic needs of the country. Things like really emphasizing South-South relations. I see President Zuma is leading a big delegation next week to China. That's obviously an important frontier economy for South Africa. At the moment, we export a lot of raw materials to that economy and import a lot from China, as does everyone else, because they are the factory of the world. But India, China, setting up Brazil, setting up new economic relationships beyond our very strong ties to Europe and also to the US through, and we've got good access there through things like AGOA. Other components, obviously the Industrial Policy Action Plan, and particular new components within that, trying to align that with our climate change agenda, so the whole green tech and green industry push, but also realizing that our economy needs to really scale up its manufacturing base. We've lost a lot of that since the demise of apartheid. We came from a very protected environment and where we had sanctions and an industrial base created quite falsely. But at the same time, there's been a rapid deindustrialization, and we need to find ways to start stimulating manufacturing again. But we're doing this at a time when everyone in the world is hoping to increase value-added exports and realizes it can't just be about services, economies and debt. You actually have to produce something that people want. Now, I think there's also a great realization that we've in government, and I think it's going to be built quite strongly into this new growth path, is the resources economy. And I think there, especially mining and agriculture. But mining, I think there's a strong realization that more can be done here. We can really build that industry, and we need to also create the linkages downstream into manufacturing. And I think that's why the ICT, Sishen, Kumba, Oslo, Mittalfight's been so important as well, because if there is a further separation of the resources from downstream manufacturing, which is one of the threats of that unwinding of that 2001 unbundling agreement. it's that further separation. It makes downstream manufacturers, although they've never really benefited from that resource because ArcelorMittal never passed it on in proper steel prices as they were meant to. But if there is a further separation from downstream manufacturing and from a beneficiation agenda, we really aren't going to fully benefit from this incredible resource. That's job creating, but also very much a foreign exchange earning resource. Similarly in agriculture, I think a lot of opportunity to rebuild that sector and become both food secure, but also become a much more job intensive, it's a job rich place to be.
Emphasis is also reportedly being given to the issue of a partnership with civil society. Do you see this as crucial?
Yes, I think it's going to have to be a partnership. Government can really only provide the scaffolding for any growth that's going to be built. Actually, business and labour, civil society are the actual builders and financiers of any growth. So I think that there needs to be, as Minister Gordon says, a meeting of the minds. There needs to be a discussion about where do each party, where can they contribute. I think it will be asymmetrical because government and business obviously have to contribute the most, but I think there's also a want or a desire to engage with labour. It's a very powerful force. We've seen the strikes this year. We see the public service strike at the moment. To try and forge some sort of social compact where there's more of a give and take, understanding our roles within this growth aspiration. And I think that's going to be a very key building block of any successful growth aspirational plan. We've already seen, the ASCISA come and go. And in fact, we were getting quite close to some of the ASCISA goals, which was the previous plan, which overtook the gear plans. And we saw that go because really it was the world recession. And I think, that is the context that we live in. We are very integrated into the world economy. So we have to take that into account. But if we're going to aspire, we're going to have to require some sort of social compact where all the parties know their roles and can give and take.
Do you think it is wise to aspire to a 7% growth rate while the world economy is so fragile still?
Well, I think there is a credibility issue here. It's very hard for the finance minister because he's wanting to put out this new target, and he's trying to say we can't be business as usual. We can't carry on growing at these rates, which are, the current rates are below trend, but even the pre-recession trend rates are not enough to create the jobs that this economy needs. It has to be about job creation. It has to be about reducing income inequality. And I think that it is a difficult time to be putting this on the agenda, and it will lack some credibility. Because if you look at where we're coming from, firstly, a recession last year. This year we've had some good growth in the first few months of the year, but that's unlikely to be repeated for the whole year. So most analysts are saying, or economists are saying, probably 3% growth this year, which is better than the 2.3 that Treasury suggested it would be in February. But we're not going to be growing anywhere near the 7% type level. So it's a hard sell. But at the same time, I think apart from the fact that we've really blown some of the World Cup tailwinds, in this whole media debate and the whole mining title issue, I think that there is still a World Cup tailwind. We see it in initiatives like Lead South Africa and civil society wanting to come together to build on that success. And I think they do need some sort of target to aspire to, even if we need to admit that it's going to take some time before we're going to get to those levels. But yeah, I think it is going to be a hard sell. It is going to be difficult to be credible talking about these sort of growth rates. But and I think there's going to be criticism of it. But I don't think we should stop trying because of that.
Terence, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.